this lesson, we are going to look at a simple way to reduce the size of Photoshop files, which can be especially useful when working on large-scale projects. This method will not change your actual project, but it can make saving, transferring, or storing Photoshop files much more efficient. How does this method work? When Photoshop saves a file, it also creates a preview image. This is the thumbnail you will see in your file browser, whether on Mac or Windows. That preview can take up a surprising amount of space, especially when the project is very detailed or very large. When you place a solid white layer at the very top of your layers panel, and then save your Photoshop file whilst this white layer is visible, you're essentially telling Photoshop to create a plain white preview instead of a detailed one of your artwork. This means the Photoshop file will be a smaller file size. Saving and transferring this file will be faster, but the trade-off is that you will not see a preview of your project in your operating system. Instead, you'll see just a white preview. And this trick is most useful when file size and speed matter more than the preview. Demonstration. Now let's see this in action. So I prepared an advanced Photoshop project with many layers and effects. First, I am going to save it normally, with the project layers all visible in the Layers panel. And once the file is saved, we can check it and see that the file size is 137.5 megabytes. Now let's go back into Photoshop and add a new layer at the very top of the layer panel by selecting this button. And then we will fill it with a solid white. To do this, ensure that your foreground color is set to white in the toolbar on the left, and then find the Paint Bucket tool, and left-click once with it to fill this layer. Make sure that this layer is visible, then save the Photoshop file again. Now if I check my Photoshop file again, we can see the file size is 113 megabytes, and that's a reduction of 17%. Keep in mind, the percentage of reduction will vary depending on your project. If your file has lots of smart objects and adjustment layers, sometimes the difference is small, but in other cases, it can be quite large. With the project I just tested full of smart objects and adjustment layers, I saw a 17% reduction. But in another project I tested, the reduction was much larger, around 37%. So it really depends on the complexity of the file that we're working with. And that's all there is to it. A simple trick to reduce Photoshop file sizes by controlling how the preview is generated. It won't be useful for every project, but when you're dealing with very large Photoshop files, it can make a big difference. So, next time you need to save space or transfer a design quickly, try adding a white cover layer before saving. Now, the question is, are you ready for the next lesson?